Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we are going to talk about the weird and wacky Q1 that we just completed in the Guelph real estate market. We're going to talk about the results, so what exactly happened between January 1st and March 31st in the Guelph real estate market. We're going to talk about why we think some of these things happen the way they did. And we're also going to take a look into Beth and Ryan's crystal ball all the way out till the end of the summer. So for spring and summer, to give you our thoughts on what we think could happen. So if you find this type of information useful, give us a subscribe and let's get to it. But first, for those I don't have the pleasure of knowing yet, my name is Ryan Waller and I work in Guelph real estate with my wife Beth. And together we are one of the top volume teams within the city and within Keller Williams Canada, with the goal of giving our clients, whether that's new clients or existing, more information, better information on the Guelph real estate market to help make more informed decisions, because that's what you expect from your real estate agent, to give you opinions, advice, and insights that help make better decisions. So what a first quarter that was. The Guelph real estate market was probably, like most other markets in Southern Ontario, sluggish at best. And we had two real challenges that hit the market in the first quarter. One of them was not as much new inventory or new listings as we thought we would see, which caused an impact not only on some sellers, but also on many buyers. And the second one is that there, as a result, were not many transactions that happened. In fact, we set a whole bunch of new records in the first quarter in each month, a trifecta of records for slow volume. In January, we had the slowest January we've seen in years, and also January was one of the slowest months in totality in the last number of years. February set a record, a multi-year record for being the lowest volume month, February month in years, and then follow it up with, guess what? March was the lowest volume March we have seen in years. So each month this year so far has been below last year in terms of the number of transactions. Now, it's also noteworthy because last year was also a slow month in the first quarter. So to come lower than last year's lows doesn't get much lower, I guess. And so at the end of the first quarter, we were down 15% on number of units sold. So that's the actual number of houses that sold. We've sold 52 less houses this year in the first quarter versus last year in the first quarter. Also in the first quarter, the dollar volume was down. So if you add up all of the sale prices of all the houses that sold, that number was down 19% versus the first quarter of last year as well. So unit volume down 15, dollar volume down 19. And the last metric we watch is the average price. And the average price, interestingly enough, in the Guelph real estate market in Q1 was down 4.9%, 5% versus the same time last year. So despite the fact that unit sales and dollar volume were down double digits, the average price did hold the line. I mean, it is down 5%, but not nearly as much as the other two metrics. So the market did not crash in the first quarter, although there was a bit of a challenge to get transactions to come together. Let's talk about what some of those challenges were. So let's look at the buyer side first. If you were a buyer in the first quarter, you had a couple of things that were causing you to pause when it came to completing a real estate transaction that maybe was a little bit easier to do in the prior years. If you were a buyer, you certainly didn't like the weather. And with 25% of buyers each month coming from outside of Guelph, most likely the GTA, into Guelph to buy, if there was a snowstorm or it was minus 20, you probably didn't want to make the trek down the 401 into Guelph. It means that buying a house in many cases was not urgent. It was something that maybe you would have liked to do. Would have liked to do on a certain week, or had plans to do in January or February, and just put it off because you thought, enough, I'll just wait for the warmer weather to come along. It sounds crazy to think that someone would put off such a big purchase of a home because of the weather, but it does play a role for sure, especially when winter started, snow started in November, and it continued all the way through until into March. It did start to weigh on people, and less transactions happen as a result. The other factor for buyers was certainly buyers are impacted by headlines. And when there is uncertainty, buyers tend to put things off until there is a little more certainty in the market. And there are a couple of reasons for uncertainty. One of them was, of course, U.S. politics and some of the things going on there. And also related to that, headline news about the state of unemployment or state of the economy in southwestern Ontario. And a lot of people didn't want to make big decisions when there is a lot of uncertainty going on. So that was another factor. And the last one that we think played a role in the bizarre Q1 numbers was that there were enough options out there for buyers, and in particular in some segments more so than others like condos or townhouses, where buyers could take their time. We are in 4 months, 5 months of inventory at the moment, and buyers have a lot of selection. And so they don't need to make a decision right away. And what we found was that buyers were shopping around. They would go to our listings, take a look around, go to 3 or 4 other listings that day, take a look around, think about it, maybe decide now's not the right time, maybe want to go to their bank and think about what that might look like on paper, on their monthly budget before they make a decision. And we're in no rush. And as a result of that, many buyers tried to negotiate harder with sellers, and sellers, which we'll talk about in a second, weren't having a lot of it. And so those buyers said, well, if you're not willing to give me the price, maybe I should just wait it out a little bit longer and see what happens. Or let me go to another listing down the street and see if that person is willing to negotiate with me if you're not. If you were a seller, you probably experienced a bit of frustration in the market in Q1. You would put your house on the market at what you thought was a reasonable market price. You had people come through the house. They oftentimes would not give you any feedback, or if they did give you feedback, it was somewhat neutral. They liked your house. They were looking at others, and you wouldn't hear back. And if you did hear back, they would probably come in with an offer that was at least 10% below what you were asking. And if you weren't willing to do it, well, they would just say, okay, I'll move on. And of course, that wasn't every transaction, but that was pretty common. And we had sellers who didn't want to accept that. And so the house doesn't sell. The transaction doesn't happen, which was the story of the first quarter. We also had situations where sellers would not want to accept the market conditions. So sellers had a price in mind. It's their house. They can sell it for whatever they like. The market wasn't willing to give that to them because there were so few buyers that there were so few offers. And sometimes the gap between the asking price and the offer price was so large that sellers said, if you can't negotiate me closer, I'm not doing it, and I'll take my house off the market, which ultimately happened on a number of occasions. So sellers' lack of showings, sometimes lowball offers after showings, and oftentimes just buyers would just think about what they're going to do and not come back. And so that brings us to today. Here we are in April. And if you had to follow the trend, you would say that January was down, February and March were down, April maybe down as well. It's tough to say. We're in early days. This is really between April, May, and June where the bulk of the annual sales come from. So you would expect that April would be better than March, but that really isn't the question. Does April perform better than last April is really what we're watching. I can tell you that we do look at the market in terms of months of inventory to determine what type of market we're in. And there are 3 types of markets. There is a seller's market that we saw in 2022. That's 0 to 2 months inventory, where there is a lot of demand, so a lot of buyers, and very few houses. And so the buyers are scrambling to get the available houses and are willing to bid them up because there's such demand. That was 2022. We are not there anymore. Between 2 and 6 months inventory is a healthy, balanced market where buyers and sellers can negotiate freely on anything from prices to closing dates to conditions. And that is where we are at now. We are at 5 months of inventory. So we're on this end of the months of inventory. At 6 months plus, we move into a buyer's market. And a buyer's market is where there is more supply, more available homes than there is demand. So there are less buyers and more homes, meaning each seller trying to make their home as attractive as possible to the fewer buyers that there are out there. And buyers typically can negotiate. It's the opposite of a seller's market where buyers don't have the opportunity to negotiate. In a buyer's market, they certainly do. So we are at 5 months. I think once we cross 6, we'll be in a buyer's market. And I do anticipate that based on the current volume available, the 464 houses we have on the market, and based on the week sales trend of the last 3 months that we have, that is the calculation, that we are going to move into a full-blown 6-month plus buyer's market within the next month or so. By May or June, we will probably move into a buyer's market. We believe that as we move into May, June, July, and August, prices are going to slowly drift downwards in totality. And that is an average. So we don't believe that everything in the city of Guelph is going to decline over the next 4 months, but we do believe that the average price will slowly drift downwards just because we anticipate there's going to be more supply available. And unless the buyers show up en masse to buy up these new listings that hit the market, there is no place for the prices to go but down. That is just basic supply and demand. So no crash coming, but we do believe they're going to drift downwards. If we take a look at one win for sellers and one win for buyers right now in today's market, if you are a seller, you might be winning if you have a house between 700,000 and 900,000, in particular a bungalow in the neighborhoods of Old University, downtown, the Ward, Exhibition Park, or St. George's Park, because there are few of them on the market. And when they do come on the market, they tend to grab some attention because there is no new land, obviously, to build detached houses on here. So unless it's an infill, the product is the product. There is no more available land to build these. Also, a secondary star there to sellers who may be between $1 million and $1.2 million in those same neighborhoods, because there seems to be a lack of product there as well. If you are a buyer right now, you are a winner. If you are looking for a condo, whether it's a high-rise or whether it's a low-rise condo, if you are looking at a stacked townhouse, you are a winner. And if you are looking to buy some townhomes, you are a winner. Part of the reason is that the University of Guelph has less international enrollment. And traditionally, in the past few years anyways, there has been panic setting in about available housing because there's been so many students. Well, without those extra international students now, that frees up a lot of housing, and landlords are sitting on a lot of vacant properties that they're not quite sure what to do with. And now there is more supply of condos in particular than we've had in the last little while. As well, the city of Guelph has doubled down on developments such as stacked townhouses, and there is ample supply of those. So if you are a buyer, you can certainly negotiate on all of those segments and get a better deal. So with that, thanks for tuning in. Of course, you can always subscribe and see our videos here. You can follow me along on our Guelph Real Estate Report podcast project. I'm at episode number 35 for an audio version, as well as on our website, bethandryan.ca, where we update bi-weekly on the Guelph real estate market. And for those data geeks like me, there's a lot of charts and data there. So thanks again for tuning in. And until the next time, we'll see you later.